A 1-year-old baby boy is dead, baby Nicky. And no, he wasn't killed in a car crash. He didn't die in the hospital after some malady. He didn't have a childhood injury. He didn't choke on his food, nothing like that. This sweet little boy, I don't know if you've ever seen American Girls. My daughter loved American Girls. This little boy looks just like Bitty Baby, who was her favorite American Girl. It's American Girl doll baby, Bitty Baby. He is so perfect, he doesn't even look real. He's dead. A 1-year-old baby is dead from an overdose, a fentanyl overdose. How did that happen? What, were his parents drug mules? Were they addicts? Did they live in a drug house? No. Baby Nicky died from a fentanyl overdose at daycare. Not only did baby Nicky die of a fentanyl overdose while at daycare, the daycare had just had their license renewed the week before by the city. Now, there's some good investigative work. The city comes to the daycare and goes, yeah, it's great. You're renewed. Here's your license. There is fentanyl. There are fentanyl presses, which are machines. If once you've seen one, you know what it is. It's kind of like those huge exotic cappuccino machines. They're giant and they're used for drug distribution. 3 drug presses and at least a kilo of fentanyl at the daycare. We find out the fentanyl was kept under the mat where the children played. There's so many things wrong with this, including the fact that the owner-operator of the daycare, Grei Mendez, a 36-year-old female, called multiple people before calling 911. Let all that soak in. Joining me right now, a renowned expert. With me, Dr. William Morrone, author of American Narcan on Amazon, chief medical examiner and toxicologist joining us. Dr. Morrone, thank you for being with us. I want to hear your thoughts right off the bat about baby Nicky Nicholas.
This is such a tragedy, but it reflects the devilish nature. And there is nothing good about fentanyl, and to see that it's casually kept in a daycare, health policy, human services, medicine. There's so many different failures at every level here. If you call 911 at this neighborhood in New York, you're going to have a first responder at your home in 2 to 3 minutes. And every single agency that qualifies as a first responder is going to walk in with 2 different sources of Narcan. They're going to walk in with a nasal spray that you can do with anything. You can do it in a baby. You can do it in an adult. And it's a push, and it puts a mist up the nose and gives you 4 milligrams of Narcan. And then as backup, they'll have IV for higher doses. Every single first responder across America, all the police have it, sheriffs, EMTs, at fire department, even the FBI and DEA and military units have fentanyl. That's how dangerous it is. It can be used as a weapon of mass destruction. That's how toxic.
Dr. Morrone, I understand that even fentanyl, even the size of a fingernail clipping, can kill an adult, much less a baby.
Yeah, I think a baby would probably die from something as big as a pen point tip, an ink pen.
Why do we even have it? Why does it exist?
Fentanyl has entered into the professional drug dealer pipeline in America, and it has replaced heroin because of its potency and because it's a synthetic and can be made in the laboratory, whereas heroin had to be grown in fields halfway around the world, in Asia and in Afghanistan and in Turkey. And then all the heroin had to be processed, and it's labor, it's a crop. You get rid of all that with fentanyl.
Heroin is made from poppies.
Yeah.
Do you remember in Wizard of Oz where Dorothy sees the Emerald City and she's got the Scarecrow and the Lion and Tin Man with her, and they start crossing the poppies and fall asleep? And I thought about that on my first heroin trafficking prosecution. And the only ones that don't fall subject to it, I believe it was the Tin Man, because he, didn't have those feelings, but they were saved. And I think about this little boy, just 1 year old, a kilo of fentanyl, a kilo. I mean, I remember, Dr. Morrone, the first time I prosecuted an 8-ball. An 8-ball, I guess it was cocaine. And that's 1/8 of an ounce. And that's a big deal, an 8-ball. And gang members would have a big 8, like on a pool ball on the back of their jackets for an 8-ball. I don't know if you remember that. But this is a kilo, which is, I think, 2.2 pounds.
Yeah, it's volume-wise, if you had to say, well, how big is that? That's weight. It's probably the equivalent of 2 Mountain Dew bottles that are 24 ounces each. That's how the size it is. And it's tightly wrapped and shrink wrapped and bound in plastic. But there's always dust on the outside. There's always transfer of the fentanyl powder to whatever it touches. That's why law enforcement investigators and first responders wear gloves. It's not because they're worried about bacteria. They're worried about chemicals like fentanyl. There's a story of how dangerous fentanyl is. About 25 years ago, terrorists took over the Moscow Opera House, and Vladimir Putin put fentanyl in the air conditioning, put everybody to sleep, put 1,000 people to sleep. And that's how they dealt with that. So think about that. They take a couple handfuls of fentanyl, throw it in the air conditioner of an opera house, and put 1,000 people asleep. This teeny tiny little bit transfers from a plastic toy, from a carpet, or from a foam mat to a baby's skin that is thinner than a piece of paper.
I'm just thinking about 1-year-old Nicholas Dominici. There was an unnamed 8-month-old girl, an unnamed 2-year-old boy, another unnamed 2-year-old boy, all of them near death, but they were saved. Nicky had only been at that daycare for 1 week. This was his first week at daycare. And I got to tell you, Dr. Morrone, I've told you before, when I was trying to meet a book deadline and working 2 jobs. What were the jobs? Oh, yes. It was at CNN's HLM and a syndicated show, Swift Justice, a kind of a judge show, and the book deadline. And the twins were 18 months old. And I would have them all day when I was supposed to be writing the book. So we put them in a daycare with 5 children at a Lutheran church, and I was so torn up, I would actually park in the parking lot and work on the book with my laptop so I could go look in the window to check on them, like, every 20 minutes. Okay, that's crazy. I know that. But what about the moms, Dr. Morrone, that can't do that? that they have to go to the grocery store and stock the shelves, that they have to go to the mall and work, that they have to go drive a UPS truck or a FedEx truck, and they have to trust the daycare and believe that their child is okay in order to function. And this fentanyl, a kilo of fentanyl stored. And could you explain what a drug press is?
When they distribute the fentanyl, they no longer give it to you in a little plastic bag like they did heroin. Now they make fraudulent, fake pills that copy the pills that were Percocets and Norcos and Vicodins. So you're buying a fake pill and it's made with extra powder to bulk it up, but it's made with fentanyl in it. And that's the end result of two things. They need these presses to make these pills because everybody that's out there as a drug user is afraid of an unknown powder. You don't know what's in the powder. So the drug dealers sell these contraband tablets, these tablets that are not what they look like, and people feel more comfortable. You can swallow it. You can crush it and snort it. You can smoke it in a pipe. You can dissolve it and inject it, whatever you want to do with it. But people are afraid of these unknown powders. So now the drug dealers trying to help people continue to buy illegal drugs, make fake pills with these presses. And it looks like a cappuccino machine, and you pull a handle down and it presses a powder that kind of looks like, powdered sugar or flour or Parmesan cheese into a fake tablet. It goes into a tube and it has a metal face on either side, and they put a little bit of color in it. In our area, they have fake Percocets, so they're blue. The big difference is real Percocets don't crumble when you put them between your fingers and you rub, and these fake ones crumble. And what we have is a problem with the high school kids buy them, crush them on tinfoil, and they either snort them or heat them and then inhale the smoke. And they think, it's a pill. It's got to be safe. But these are pills made by drug dealers, not by FDA certified manufacturers.
And in the so-called daycare, which obviously was a front for a drug den, selling, distributing, creating drugs, neighbors said they never saw children going in and out ever, but they would see grown men going in and out at all hours of the day and night. And back to, of course, I'm not a shrink, Dr. Morrone, as you well know. I'm just a JD, but I think you're right. I think there is something psychological to the fact that somebody handed me a bag of loose powder, I would get rid of it immediately. But a pill is something that people are used to. It's okay. It's like an aspirin or a Tylenol or an Advil. You think, this came from a pharmaceutical factory. It's fine. It's not. There's something psychological. We're trained to think a pill is okay because mom gave us baby aspirin. I can't explain it. I'm not a shrink. You explain it.
It's a visual image associated with the cultural risk that you live in.
Okay, hold on. A visual image associated with the cultural risk you live in. What?
Yeah. What the heck does that mean?
Speak English. Dumb me down for me, man.
It's everybody that is involved in the drug use culture. They're habitual drug users. They struggle with processing, and they're very impulsive. They don't deal well with stress. And if you give them an unknown powder, they're going to say, I don't know, this might have fentanyl. Sometimes they call it hot packs. And everybody's seen their friends die from injecting hot packs. So now you change what it is and you say, you can take it, you can swallow it, or, you can crush it and snort it.
It's quote, just a pill.
Yeah. And the other thing it does for the drug dealers is it sets up a unit dose of sale instead of some bag that people, well, is that bag? Do you have enough in there? No, now you're paying per pill. And they can make thousands of these pills and put them in bags, Ziploc bags, and send them out to be sold on the street. And it's this innocent little thing that, it looks like a Pez or a sweet tart or something, but it looks like Percocet.
Well, you know what? I don't know all of the psychological ins and outs of why you are conditioned to think it's okay to take a pill. But I know this, when you go into a place and they've got 3 drug presses, that's bad. I know that much. I mean, think about Breaking Bad, okay? Think about the inside of the drug manufacturing, whether it was in the van that they had parked out in the desert, or whether it was a full-on laboratory that we see later in Breaking Bad. That's what we're talking about. That's who has multiple pill presses. I mean, I don't have a pill press in our house. I barely have a coffee machine, much less a pill press. And you know it when you see it. But, forget the pill press. Why did this little baby have to die? The mom's got to go to work. The dad's got to go to work. They just relicensed the daycare the week before. What? How? I mean, I guess they've got to bring drug dogs to okay a daycare facility from now on. But they failed. And why in the world were DEA agents with the EMTs, the first responders? Was this place under surveillance and they allowed children to go in there to protect their drug investigation? What? Why did the baby die, Dr. Morrone? Let me just focus on what I can get my mind wrapped around. The baby, Nicholas Felice Dominici, is dead from a fentanyl overdose. A kilo of fentanyl under the playmat. Why did the baby have to die?
A baby has to die because we have a failure in demand and a failure in supply policy with drugs causing fracture in our medical system. That there's a need for people to make this, and they use the children as shields. This child is a prop. All the 2, 3, 4, whatever number of kids are there, they're there to hide a criminal enterprise because there's so many people that have a spiritual hole in them, and they use drugs to try to fill that gap. And they want to get numb instead of processing and getting a job and having a family. That need, that broken part of society, that gap, that spiritual hole is where the drug industry fills its gap and makes its money. And they don't care where they go. They don't care who dies. It's just making hundreds of thousands of pills and selling them. And this child and other children at that site that lived but still had an overdose are props.
You know what it makes me think of, Dr. Morrone? When you see, let's just pretend in a movie, and you see the bad guy using a human shield as the bullets are being fired, and suddenly everybody stops firing because they've got the innocent person in front of them. This woman, this POC, Grei Mendez, 36, the female owner-operator of the daycare, she might as well have held up baby Nikki in front of her as they were shooting machine guns at him. I mean, she was using the babies as a cover for her drug operation, pretending it's a daycare where everybody in the neighborhood knew only grown men were coming in and out at odd hours. They didn't see babies there. This is just all a big lie. And get this, Dr. Morrone, I don't know if you know this or not. Baby Nikki's mother says that this daycare facility was recommended to her by the community rec center. The community center recommended this daycare to her. So when she had to go back to work, she got their recommendation and went to this daycare. Can you believe that?
That's how broken the system is. That's how broken the system is, that people don't know this. And I don't have a problem with drug sniffing dogs visiting daycares that need certification. We have to change the policies on this. If every single police car, if every squad, if every sheriff has Narcan in it, every daycare, every kindergarten, every public school should have Narcan in it. They're risking this. If you want to certify as a daycare, you have to have an emergency plan for opioid exposure, fentanyl exposure, because if it was casual from another family and not a criminal enterprise, you still need the same plan.
How does it work? You said it could be a nasal spray for a child?
Yes. And it is the exact same device that we use to spray medicine up the nose to help people that have migraine headaches. Same thing. It's like a little tube. Remember when you were a small kid and your mom gave you a Vicks inhaler and you put it up your nostril and you went, looks like that, but it has a push on it and it blows a mist that has naloxone in it, and you absorb it into your nose. And there's two ways it gets to your brain. It's absorbed into your blood and has to go up through your heart and your lungs and then goes to your brain. And then we've hypothetically theorized that there actually is veins and arteries in the nose that go to the brain circulation directly. And you would spray this medicine up the nose and it gets to the brain. And it would have been
that fast.
It would have been that fast because we tell you it has to work within a minute. You mean
like in the time she waited to call 911 when she was calling all of her drug hench people to tell them the gig was up, that and then suddenly, caught on surveillance video, you see a male come into the home. This is before EMTs get there, and start taking trash bags of stuff out of the home. In that amount of time, Nikki's life could have been saved.
Nikki's life could have been saved 4 or 5 times in the amount of time they spent cleaning that up to get the drugs out of there. That baby could have been sprayed with Narcan if Narcan was in every daycare, and that baby could have come back, and then the 911 call would be to stabilize and not reverse an overdose. The baby still goes to the hospital, but you reestablish. The Narcan goes into the brain and it pushes all the fentanyl off, because fentanyl goes to the part of the brain that tells you to stop breathing, to slow down your breathing.
Dr. Morrone, you've seen so many opioid, fentanyl overdoses and deaths. And I guess the most famous one would have been Prince, who could absolutely have been saved. No question. But how often do you see a baby 12 months old dead of a fentanyl overdose that happens at daycare?
What we see that's just as big of a tragedy is mom and dad are drug users and the fentanyl exposure can be at home. But if mom and dad are drug users and they're in and out of treatment, they have fentanyl at home. So we do get to reverse this, but you would never, ever expect this to be going on at a daycare. And that is the greatest tragedy, because somebody trusted a business.
But how did it transfer, Dr. Morrone? I mean, how did the baby, he obviously didn't snort it up. He didn't use a hypodermic needle. He didn't chase the dragon and light it on a piece of tinfoil. So how did the baby, Nikki, get fentanyl into his system?
There's 2 ways that fentanyl got into Nikki. The first would have been a transfer like dust or dirt, that fentanyl powder on a carpet, a mat, a toy, a plastic, or a piece of furniture touched Nikki. And the fentanyl went into his blood through his skin because the baby has very thin skin. The second way that is actually probably more dangerous is that the fentanyl was involved in some kind of dust. Something hit something that the kilo was on, and dust came off. Like you slap it down too hard on the table, or you drop it on the floor, and it kicks something off that's a dust. And it's so potent that walking through it's just like, walking through somebody sprays air freshener. You can't see it, but you can smell it. And the baby breathes dust that's been aerosolized by somebody slapping, dropping, or touching that kilo of fentanyl. And it goes into the baby's lungs, it goes to the head, goes to the part of the brain, and it says, slow down, stop breathing, and the baby stops breathing. And unless you have Narcan, unless you can give Narcan in that first minute or 2 or 3, then the baby doesn't
So that's all it took, was the baby to
That's all it took.
Breathe in the dust from fentanyl. You know,
That's how dangerous it is.
Badly I want all of these people to go to jail for life. I don't know why this should not be a death penalty case, but nothing will bring baby Nikki back. And I cannot imagine what this mother and father are going through right now. Our prayers for them go on as we continue to pray for justice. Thank you, Dr. Morrone. Thank you so much. Goodbye, friend. Guys, thank you for watching Crime Online with Nancy Grace here on YouTube. To get the very latest, subscribe to Crime Online here